Don't know what that was. Now I know the title of this video is my favorite books of 2020, and I know that 2020 isn't over yet. But now that that's out of the way, let's go on. I have my lovely bullet journal in which I track various things, and it's basically just like an agenda. But I also, at the start of the year, made this list of stuff I did, where I list films and books that I read or watched, and I thought I'd go through them and say which ones I recommend, which ones not. Maybe I also won't do that. We'll just see what happens throughout this video. Oh, and by the way, today's about books, not movies. At the start of the year, I read Little Women. I reread Little Women because I read it once when I was like 13. I still know what the story is about, but I kind of wanted to freshen it up because at the start of this year the movie came out and I wanted to reread the book again before I went to watch it so I could, you know, just like, I don't know, connect to the story more or like realize what's happening or something. I don't know. Yeah. But I remember it was one of my favorite books when I was 13 and I reread it and I still really liked it. I think it is one of the highlights of this year because, I don't know, I feel like, you know, the genre of like new adult books and so, and I feel like usually with a lot of books in today's day and age, especially kind of like written for, not that Little Women is written for younger audiences, but like teenagers could read it. One issue I have is with the theme around like equality and how everybody thinks, okay, well, things have evolved today, everything is more equal than it was. And in books, in my experience, I find that while the environment was more unequal back then, just because of like how society was, the books and the figures in the books are written in a more emancipated than the books today. In comparison to new adult books, I read a few new adult books this year, like some of them are actually from German authors, so I don't know if you'll know them, but like All Your Perfects, Begin Again, Delight in Us, Never Too Close, Never Too Late, Truly, and Madly, like those kind of books. And I find that in those books it's like, despite the society being more evolved, that the characters are still written in a very, the male person has this role and the female person has this role. Back then I feel like the women were more prone to try to break out of the rule. In Little Women, for example, Jo. But I also think in many ways the other girls had a very strong personality, versus in today's new adult books they often get represented as very fragile and need to be protected. Throughout history things have changed. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've improved. And I think that, I'm just rambling a bit, you know? I just think that in Little Women, it was put out really well. I just really like the book. In many ways. In the way it was written, in the messages it had, in the strong characters. There's something about books that aren't really set out to have this typical adventure thing, like, you know, with Aristotle's pyramid, like with the, you know, everybody gets introduced and then it goes up and then the pyramid and then like the high point and then it falls. In these books somehow it's managed to portray a normal life in a very interesting way where you still learn out of the little everyday things that these characters go through. And I almost think that needs more talent to be able to write an interesting story in an everyday book where the characters need to be so strong that it is an interesting book than if you just have a book where all of the actions and things that happen in the book make it interesting. Like in Little Women, the characters have to be so strong so that they don't rely on like the outside actions. Yeah. Can you say I didn't like think about what I was going to say in this video before making it? Yeah. I'm not going to go through each of them, just like the ones I really like. In summer, while I was making all the chamomile tea, I read The Other Half of Augusta Hope, and I really liked that. Story about a person growing up without necessarily too many, of course, like things happened externally and she was influenced by those. While reading, you wade throughout these magical little nuggets that are hidden throughout the book that are like, oh my god, that is so smart, I need to write that down. And you don't write it down, but you still just think it's really cool, and then you still just keep on reading and you really like the book. I didn't like the ending. I started not liking the characters towards the ending because they were just like, in my opinion, acting up a bit childish. Despite it being very different to Little Women, I think I like it for the same reason that it's the strong characters carry the story rather than the actions, which make it more relatable, if that makes sense. Then I read What the Dog Saw, which is not like this traditional book of like where you have like this character and then like just stuff happens. It's more a collection of essays or articles that this guy wrote, and I really thought they were so interesting. I don't know what genre this book is. I'll maybe have to look it up, but I just really liked it. It just had so much information that you could learn of. So it was like talking about different people's lives and taking one of the core messages of what they learned in their life and trying to teach you, or just trying to like explain to you how they came to that conclusion. It was just a really good book, and I can recommend it to basically anybody who is interested in learning stuff in an interesting way also. Then the next one, which might be my favorite book of the year just because it was so different and so funny, is The Diary of a Somebody by Brian Bilston. I actually think for a time long he was my favorite poet, just because he wrote about such mundane things, but it was so funny but like still serious, and it was just genius. It's basically about this guy, and I think it follows him for about a year, and he goes through life and he's a bit of weirdo. Makes these very funny attempts of writing poems, also sometimes writing a poem in a style of a different poem but like changing the words. Dry sarcasm, I don't know if that's a thing. It was like very, you know, when people have like this really hilarious thing they say but they actually mean it completely honest, and they're funny without meaning to be, but it's like also not that funny. It's also not that humor where you laugh out loud. It's just like where you're internally like, you know? Yeah, I just really loved that book. And I then also later on read He Took the Last Bus Home by him. I also just really appreciate play on words, which he does perfectly. So I can really recommend that book too. And then I still read some other ones. Then two German books I still really liked that I read was Das Kind in dir muss Heimat finden and Wir Kinder vom Bahnhof Zoo. Just because, out of various reasons, but I find it hard to talk about them because they're German books and I don't like switching languages. Another highlight of my year is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I think A Tree Grows in Brooklyn is very much like a mixture between Little Women and the other half of Augusta Hope. It was just really magical to me. It's about this girl growing up in Brooklyn, and it follows her for a few years, her growing up and her learning such interesting, like her having such interesting thoughts, such unique thoughts, things I'd never thought about, but they make really much sense, and like just a really nice way of writing and describing certain feelings in a way that the feelings haven't been described before, but it's like really nice and you can relate. It's just wow. It's just, I don't know, I can really recommend it. It's just a really beautiful story, and to say what happens in the book, because that is not that relevant in the story, because what's relevant is the character and how she develops. Great. And the last book that I really liked was The Secret Life of Bees. I'm almost done with it, I'm still at it, but it's also, again, I'm really fascinated by it. Like also again, this different point of view that I am not used to. I just always find it so interesting when you get to dive into a different world that is completely not anything like yours, but still very relatable. I don't know if I'm making sense in this video. It's just amazing, and I can recommend it. And yeah. Now, because this was a big mumble mumble thing, I'll list up all the books I mentioned here, like my favorites, just because this video may have been very confusing, not just for you, but for me too, so don't worry. And I hope you read some of them. I think they're really good, and I don't know, just a feeling of appreciation maybe, I don't know. I'm now just using words for, yeah, bye.